The New York City Marathon is the greatest marathon in the world to me. I've ran it 8 times. I've set my PR here 1 time. And again, I'm coming back at it in 2024 to come after it. If you've been following along, thank you for watching the journey as I get ready to set my PR. And I think the fitness and the business end of training has told me I should finish somewhere between 241 and 243. And so that's really where the pacing is going to come into, is setting myself up to run between 241 and 243 in the New York City Marathon. Going to run through the course preview and my pacing strategy kind of for the whole thing. Pretty much 2 big time check marks that I look at, especially in the New York City Marathon. The first 5K, because of the challenging nature of the start, and the half marathon. Those are my 2 big time checks that I look at. The rest of it is going to be based upon how my body's feeling, not going too fast, and focusing on where things are moving forward. Having ran it so many times, I have this kind of backlog of the times I've ran it well and the times I haven't ran it well. And my fastest time for running this course was actually in 2017 at a 249. One of the things that's very interesting about this course is I pretty much even split that race, which is a really interesting thing because when I look at my PR, I had negative split, which was 2019 in Chicago Marathon. But because of the way the New York City Marathon is laid out and the challenging nature of the second half compared to the first, I'll be shooting roughly around that same thing. Try to go even split, but not be pushing myself on that front end to do negative split. The race plan for me is to come through in the first half around 121, 122, somewhere in that range, and then really focus on that second half. This race starts with the highest point of the course as far as like elevation from sea level, but also a really, really leg burning uphill. And I've ran this hill too hard. I've also ran this hill very, very well. And so one of the biggest things I'm focused on is how am I coming out of that full first 5K and not focusing so much on the pacing at mile 1 or even at mile 2, but really trying to come into mile 3. And in order to run what I want to run, somewhere between a 241 and a 243 is where my fitness thinks I am. I need to average 1905 for a 5K to about 1919. And so there's quite a range for me to be able to fall into. And coming off the Verrazano's Bridge, I'm looking to plan around a 1915 to 1925. Yeah, that's a big range for that first 5K, but that's really kind of how I like to settle myself into races. If I look at every race that I've ever ran well, that first 5K is a very, very steady, very, very relaxed first 5K. Through the duration of the first half of the marathon, there's only really a couple things that I pay attention to in the New York City Marathon after the Verrazano's Bridge. There's a few rollers that come through Brooklyn, but it's relatively a flat section of the course until you get to mile 8. And that relatively flat can be where I have burned my legs before in the past because the energy in Brooklyn is unlike any other marathon that you start out at, maybe other than Chicago. There's quite a bit of energy on the front end of Chicago. It is lined with people. There are bands. You're feeling extremely good because it's the first 8 miles of a marathon, as we should feel good. And I just want to make sure I'm maintaining consistency, maintaining my fueling, and holding back like I have felt in the last couple hard workouts that I've had, of not trying to go chase this PR time, but really holding back early to be able to get it. Once you get to mile 8 is really kind of where that first real hill following the Verrazano's Bridge comes. This is when all the races come together. Probably one of, if not my favorite moments of the entire race is Lafayette Avenue, when all the races come together. The fans get so close to the race, tree-lined street, and it is so loud and so much fun and one of the best moments in all of marathoning. But that's the part that's really sneaky. That hill alone, I've gotten caught up in the excitement, looked down at my watch and gone, I'm 20 seconds faster than marathon pace that I want to run, and really can zap the legs at mile 8. Paying attention to that when that race comes together, I really want to focus on staying within myself, and because it's an uphill, I'm okay 5-10 seconds slower than marathon pace. As we crest that hill after Lafayette, you have a nice roller getting down to Bedford Avenue, which has a little bit of a rise, but not much of a rise, all the way through until you get to Pulaski Bridge, which is the 13.1 mile mark. And that is where, in the past, I've looked down, gone, this is not going to be a very good day. Why? Because I burnt a lot of matches through Brooklyn because it's so much fun. It's so enjoyable. But I've also gotten to Pulaski Bridge, looked down and gone, I'm exactly where I need to be. I am right on my half part of my marathon goal, 121 to 122. Yes, it's a minute range, but I feel like giving myself that range is not going to put too much pressure on myself because, one, I know I'll be able to run another 121. If I'm on the 122 end, I know I can put down a 120 or even possibly a sub 120 on the back end based upon how my body's feeling currently as I'm sitting here filming this 7 days before the race. So that's the first half of the marathon. Once we crest that Pulaski Bridge, I have a solid 1 mile to get myself ready for what I believe is the mentally toughest part of the entire race, but also one of the most beautiful parts in all of marathoning is the Queensboro Bridge. Why is it tough? Is because it is just like the Verrazanos, except for you're not at the start of the race. You're at mile 16. It is a steady uphill climb for about a mile, getting you on your way over to Manhattan. Why do I think it's one of the best parts in all of marathoning? You go from the loud crowds of Brooklyn and the loud crowds of Queens into absolute silence, no crowds. All you're hearing is the pitter-pattering of all the other runners' feet and the cars that are above you with the skyline of Manhattan in the background. Absolutely one of the most amazing times in all of marathoning. And for this to come at mile 16, it's a great way to assess and go, okay, how is First Avenue going to go as I get into Manhattan? Again, similar to my previous statement about Lafayette Avenue, is in my times that I've run this race really, really well, when I've crested Queensboro Bridge and just relaxed my way into the downhill, going on to First Avenue, it was another one of those moments where I checked in and I go, this is going to be a good day, or I've checked in and gone, this is going to be a really, really challenging 10 miles. Trying to get to that point still within that time frame that I've looked at around that 19-10-ish 5Ks to be able to know I'm going to have the juice as we head up Manhattan. From mile just over 16 something to about mile 19 and a half, you're running up First Avenue, a very, very long straightaway. You pretty much feel like you can see the very end of it until you get to your fourth bridge, the Willis Avenue Bridge. But it is a fun street lined with people cheering the whole time that reminds you of why this race is so special. For me, every time in this race, I try to run along what would be the west end of the road because that's where I find the most fans to be and that's where I want to be. Feeding off their energy as I'm heading up First Avenue, getting ready for the business end of the marathon. Willis Avenue Bridge, it's not the steepest of bridges, but you will absolutely feel this in your legs at around mile 20. And to know that you have one more small little bridge, but the real hill comes at Fifth Avenue coming up, is that good mental boost to get yourself up and over and down into the Bronx. As I get into the Bronx, my whole goal, every time I've ran the New York City Marathon, I've said, get to the Bronx feeling fresh, and it is your day. That is my goal in 2024. And here's why. Yes, I do still have the Fifth Avenue climb, but I've trained for this. For me, I have the fortune of living in an area that's very, very hilly. I've done a lot of my longer tempo runs with marathon pace efforts on 1.5, 2.5, 3 mile long steady uphill climbs at marathon pace. And every time I start one of those repeats, I tell myself, this is your Fifth Ave practice. I have to remind myself that is one of the hardest hills in all of racing that I've ever done. But having just moved to Northern California, I've had the unique experience of practicing running on hills at the same length of Fifth Avenue. It's about a mile-long climb before I get up into Central Park, and that is the steady part that I know, pump my arms, stay relaxed, stay fluid, don't overstride, feet under, and focus on that climb. Because once I get into Central Park, it's pretty much rollers all the way home. Yeah, 2 miles, but it's just rollers all the way home. So Fifth Ave, that's the mantra. Focus on getting to the top of that hill, because once I crest that hill, there's some nice rollers to gain momentum all the way through Central Park until we hit Central Park South and make that right-hand turn to head towards the finish line. The best race in the world, the best my body has ever felt for a marathon. And this is where I know the pavement is about to be mine. New York City, sub 242, I'm coming for you.